Former Cleveland Browns receiver Josh Gordon has had a very tragic NFL career. If you know his story, you know why he never reached his full potential, and you know that it has nothing to do with his ability on the football field. However, I don't want to focus solely on the dark side of his career. I also want to talk about how good he was, because he had the potential to be one of the best receivers in the NFL. We saw a flash of his upside in 2013 when he tore up the league and produced one of the best receiving seasons of all time. Let's go through the numbers and see why his 2013 season was so good and why his career had such a disappointing decline. Josh Gordon entered the NFL in 2012, and he had a pretty good rookie season, recording 50 catches for 805 yards and 5 touchdowns. He led the Cleveland Browns in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns as a rookie. Gordon was one of the best rookie receivers in the NFL that season, as he ranked top 3 among the rookie class in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and approximate value. Approximate value is a stat created by Doug Dryden, which attempts to put a single number on the seasonal value for any player during any season since 1960. It is not a super precise stat, meaning that we cannot be confident that a player with an approximate value of 12 is definitely better than a player with an approximate value of 10. However, it is a pretty decent stat, and it does a solid job of determining if a season was poor, good, or great. Gordon's approximate value of 6 is decent for a rookie receiver. On June 7th, 2013, Gordon was suspended by the NFL for the first 2 weeks of the 2013 season for violating their substance abuse policy. Once he returned from his 2-week absence, he proceeded to have one of the best single-season performances we've ever seen from a wide receiver. In 2013, Josh Gordon recorded 87 catches for 1,646 yards and 9 touchdowns. He led the league in receiving yards despite ranking outside the top 5 in targets. He was extremely productive despite not having a crazy volume of targets because he was arguably the best high-volume deep threat in the entire league. In 2013, he ranked 2nd in yards per reception and 4th in yards per target. He was remarkably efficient and had similar numbers to another elite deep threat in Calvin Johnson. This is insane because Calvin Johnson was by far the best receiver in the NFL at this point. From 2011 to 2013, Calvin Johnson ranked number 1 in total receiving yards per game, and approximate value. Yeah, he was insane. The fact that Josh Gordon was more productive than Calvin Johnson shows just how good he was that year. Gordon's performance in 2013 was a massive improvement from his rookie season. In 2012, he recorded 100 receiving yards in just 1 game, but in 2013, he recorded 100 receiving yards in 7 games. One of the most impressive parts of his 2013 season is how he played from Week 11 to Week 14. During this 4-game stretch, he averaged 193.5 receiving yards and 1.3 receiving touchdowns per game. He also had over 200 receiving yards against the Steelers and Jaguars in back-to-back games. This is one of the best 4-game stretches we've ever seen from a wide receiver. Only 5 receivers in NFL history have ever recorded at least 120 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown in 4 consecutive games. Josh Gordon's 2013 season was historically great, as his 117.6 receiving yards per game ranks 3rd all-time and 2nd since the merger in 1970. This is also the most receiving yards per game from a wide receiver during their age 22 season. Josh Gordon had an incredible start to his career. By his 2nd season, he had already become one of the best receivers in the NFL. Unfortunately, this was the beginning of the end of his career, as he dealt with severe off-the-field issues for the rest of his playing days. Earlier, I mentioned that Gordon was suspended for the first 2 weeks of the 2013 season because he violated the league's substance abuse policy. This is not the last time this happened, as he was suspended 5 more times throughout the duration of his career. Josh Gordon suffered from severe drug and alcohol addiction, and this caused him a lot of problems in the NFL, but his addiction had roots going back to his time in middle and high school. This is a warning that the rest of this video involves some pretty heavy stuff, including drug and alcohol abuse. If this makes you uncomfortable, please considering not watching the rest of this video. According to Gordon, he got high for the very first time in 7th grade when he took an entire bar of Xanax. Throughout his time in middle school, he used Xanax, marijuana, and codeine to deal with anxiety and social awkwardness. Once he got to high school, he joined a gang and began stealing cars, fighting, and dealing drugs. During this time, he continued using drugs and began drinking wine before football games to see if he could play while drunk. According to Gordon, his usage became the norm in high school and was on an accelerated pace by the time he was 20 years old. After graduating from high school, Gordon accepted an athletic scholarship to play football at Baylor University. His drug use continued in college, and he was suspended 2 times by Baylor head coach Art Briles. The first time was for marijuana possession, and the second time was for a failed marijuana test. Unfortunately for Gordon, his second suspension was indefinite, so he transferred to Utah for his junior season. Once he got to Utah, he used cocaine for the very first time and began taking Adderall on a daily basis. After failing another drug test, he returned home to Houston and never played a single snap for the Utes. After just 1 season as a full-time starter in college, Gordon entered the 2012 supplemental draft, in which he was selected by the Cleveland Browns with the first pick of the 2nd round. What's really sad about Josh Gordon's drug use in college is the fact that at least one coach helped him pass drug tests. According to Gordon, he has been enabled his entire life simply because he was good at football. Now it's time to go through every suspension he served during his NFL career. After being suspended for the first 2 weeks of the 2013 season, which I mentioned earlier, Gordon was suspended for the entire 2014 season after being arrested for a DWI in North Carolina. His suspension was then lowered to 10 games due to a policy change. After playing just 5 games, the Cleveland Browns suspended Gordon for the final game of the regular season for missing a team meeting. Things got even worse the next year, as Gordon was suspended for the entire 2015 season due to another violation of the NFL's substance abuse policy. He applied to be reinstated for the 2016 season, but was denied because he failed a drug test. He was eventually reinstated, and the NFL allowed him to participate in training camp, but he was suspended for the first 4 games of the regular season. After serving his 4-game suspension, he decided to step away from the game of football and go to rehab. After his time away, Gordon was reinstated near the end of the 2017 season, and he played 5 games for the Cleveland Browns. In 2018, the Cleveland Browns parted ways with Gordon, trading him to the New England Patriots after he reportedly violated the team's trust. He was actually pretty decent for the Patriots, recording 720 receiving yards in 11 games. On December 20th, 2018, Gordon decided to once again step away from the game of football to focus on his mental health. He returned for the 2019 season, but was waived midway through the season after suffering a knee injury. He was eventually picked up by the Seattle Seahawks, but was then suspended for violating the league's policy on performance-enhancing drugs and substance abuse. As a free agent, he re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks in March of 2020 and was reinstated in December of that year. A day after his reinstatement, the NFL determined that he broke the terms of his reinstatement, so he wasn't allowed to return. He was released by the Seahawks on March 4th, 2021. Gordon once again applied for reinstation, and he was reinstated in September of 2021. After being reinstated, he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs practice squad. He is still with the team today. Josh Gordon's drug and alcohol use completely destroyed his career. After his first 2 seasons, he played just 45 games and missed 3 whole seasons due to suspensions and rehab. The way his career has played out, considering how it started, is extremely sad. Josh Gordon's story is disheartening. Seeing talented players fail to reach their potential due to off-the-field issues is always terrible, and it's no different in this case. Addiction is a terrible thing to go through, and those who struggle with it suffer greatly. I have no doubt that Josh Gordon has suffered a lot of pain and suffering throughout his career. I'm just glad he has gotten some help and seems to be doing a little bit better. I think it's important to remember that Josh Gordon is a human being just like us fans. It's easy to blame Gordon for his own failure and make his addiction his identity, but we have to be empathetic to what he has dealt with off the field. Now, I am not excusing his behavior, because addiction does not just affect the addict, it also affects everyone around them. However, we still need to treat him with respect, because we would want the same thing for ourselves and the people we care about if we were dealing with the same thing. It's really sad that most people only know Josh Gordon as an addict and not a talented football player. What he did in 2013 is remarkable, and it's a shame that it has been forgotten by many. Although his story had a dark ending, I hope we can remember the highs of Josh Gordon's career and how talented he was. I truly believe that if things were different, Josh Gordon could have been one of the best receivers of all time. Thanks for watching this video, and please consider liking and subscribing.